Right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Housing and Homelessness panel this evening. Can everybody hear me okay? First item on the agenda is apologies. I don't believe we've received any, unless anyone would like to pass any on now. No? Okay, declarations of interest, item 2. Do we have any declarations of interest from councillors? I have none. No? Okay. Item number 3, housing panel work plan. So please ignore what it says on the agenda there. The tenant satisfaction survey, which we were due to look at, hasn't been able to be prepared in time for us to do so. I understand it's being looked at by the core management team and by the leadership team. They want to review it before it's published. I am keen that this panel has a chance to consider that tenant satisfaction survey report, though. So I think we are going to need an extra meeting in December to consider that. So it's been suggested that we hold that meeting on the 16th of December. Now there is a Labour group meeting that evening at 7:30, so my preference would be, if we go for that date, to maybe start at 5 o'clock, if that would be possible, Tom.
I've got no difficulty
give
with
the Labour members at least some hope of a break before we embark on a Labour group. But would that be acceptable to members of the panel? 16th of December. Liz, what do you think?
Yes, that's fine. At 5:30, you're saying, which is good. Great.
I think it was 5 o'clock was suggested.
5 o'clock would be my preference.
Okay.
Is there anyone that doesn't work for? Chris, Lawrence, 5 o'clock on the 16th of December for an additional housing panel meeting or on Zoom?
I don't really have my diary with me, so I'll have to check, but nothing springs to mind.
It's going to be a relatively short meeting, isn't it, Linda? Because
yeah, I should imagine so. Yeah.
Something. Yeah.
That's okay with me, Linda. Thanks.
That's great. Yeah. So, so that's the 5 o'clock on the 16th of December. Confirmed then. An additional meeting to consider the tenant satisfaction survey, and related to that, we'll also get an update on housing performance for Q2, hopefully. Okay, so that's the work plan dealt with. Yeah.
It's the last meeting.
Notes of the last meeting. Agenda item 4. Does anyone have anything they wish to raise on that? I have nothing. Any other members? No. Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 5, we've got on there the landlord services performance dashboard. You'll remember this is something we requested so that we can just keep a regular eye on the performance of our housing service. The information is still not available because of a technical hold-up, but I have had a conversation with the relevant officers to suggest that the information that we get should actually mirror what the government is suggesting that social landlords make available to their tenants in the new social housing white paper, and they've agreed that that would make good sense. So when we do get the information, that's what we will be receiving, hopefully. And it would be great, even if all of that isn't available immediately, I'd like us to be able to have a template, that's populated as soon as that information comes on stream, because that's information we should be collecting and being able to have on hand to pass to tenants anyway. So that seemed to make sense to me. Any comments on that? Does that seem sensible to everybody? Yeah, great. Okay, so we're on to item 6, the Cabinet report on discretionary housing payment policy. And we've got our Cabinet member for inclusive communities here, Councillor Shaista Aziz. Welcome to the panel, and Council Officer James Pickering here to talk to this report as well. So over to you two.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thanks, Linda. So thanks for having us here. So you've got the papers there. You've seen the outline of the policy, the discretionary housing payment policy. I'm just going to outline a few key points and then hand over to James, who will be able to answer any of your questions in more detail. So this report sets out the DHP spending as well as the performance during 2020 and 21. The paper also sets out the upcoming funding and economical challenges. We know there's quite a few of them, as well as our plans going forward. The DHP policy is subject to minor wording changes, only due to its nature, and this is reflected in the recommendations. So Oxford City Council's approach to our DHP policy is unique from most others, as each what we call customers are awarded a DHP and an allocated caseworker to work with them to find solutions to their own challenges. So it's a customer-led approach that rewards engagement without punishing those with difficult circumstances, and has repeatedly delivered very good outcomes for individuals. This is highlighted by a total of 31 customers entering employment in 2020-2021, despite the pandemic and all the challenges that are ongoing. So the key points, I'm just going to draw out a few of them. There's quite a few of them, but like I said, we'll leave James to answer our questions in more detail. So in 2021, we spent 122% of our government grant. This means that we exceeded our DHP budget by over £101,000, so around £101,745. Overspend was anticipated, and it's been mitigated through various means detailed in the paper to ensure that there was no further pressure placed on the general budget. The pandemic has hit people in receipt of DHP as hard as anyone. And this is because DHP recipients in the main already have extremely limited options in terms of sustaining their tenancies. And the lockdown obviously has made all of this much harder for people. This is demonstrated by the fact that 66% of our DHP expenditure went to families affected by the benefit cap. The benefit cap disproportionately impacts lone parents with 2 or more children in Oxford compared to other welfare reforms, and their options for change are often lower as a result of the childcare challenges they face. So a number of other challenges I'm going to outline quickly. For 2021-22, the government has reduced our DHP budget by £101,000 to £357,862. As a council, we fought hard to mitigate this reduction and have already put measures in place to ensure no budget pressure is created. This criteria has been detailed in the paper. The current forecast overspend is in circa £82,000, although we anticipate that this will reduce as we get nearer to the year end. So whilst the economy is opening up and more jobs are becoming available, the cost of both childcare and rents in the private sector are continuing to rise. And obviously this is making it even harder for people who are struggling, as we all know. It is hoped that the changes to universal credit in the budget will help, but this won't make much difference to those whose benefits have been capped. So that's kind of like the overall narrative of this paper. There is of course much more detail which you've seen, so I'll stop there, and as I said, James Pickering is available to answer more questions, as am I. Thank you.
Thanks, Shaista.
Thank you, Shaista. James, would you like to say anything?
I don't think there's much I can add. That's an incredible overview. I guess the only thing I would add is that, one thing that we've maintained for a number of years is that DHP is not a long-term solution. The fluctuating budgets from government. I mean, we had £100,000 cut in March that started in April this year. So our approach to not being reliant on it, stands strong, and we're, our approach is to always try and find long-term solutions for people that DHP just can't be there for. We can't, creating a reliance on a fund that might go is just not one that we can afford to do. So that approach, still underpins what we're all about.
Understood. Okay, would any panel members like to ask any questions or make any points, or want to put forward any possible recommendations? Liz.
Thank you very much, Linda. Paragraph 23, I was interested in. It says very clearly that we can use funding from the housing revenue account, and about half the additional funding that we are having to find at the moment comes from that. What's the protection for the housing revenue account? We presumably reach a stage, if the numbers of people needing DHPs rise, as we're all afraid they will, where the housing revenue account is under quite a lot of stress. And I just wonder what your view is on this, whether we're going to be able to cover the number of people who are likely to be affected. Thank you.
Sure. Yes, I mean, it's certainly not an ideal solution. Just to be clear, we can only use money from the housing rent account that we have spent on council tenancies. So it is a direct cover. We cannot prop up sort of the private sector with money from the HRA. But it is a good option for us to be able to use, because it does de-risk our pressure on sort of the general fund, which is where we would have to find any overspend from. So I guess it's kind of the lesser of two evils in some ways.
So just on that point, so just in terms of budgeting, would that need to be agreed as a budget line at the start of the year, as part of the housing revenue account, that will be allocated to DHPs, or can it be spent retrospectively even though it's not there in the budget?
Yes, it can be spent retrospectively as long as we get permission from the Secretary of State to do that. So actually, in previous years, we've waited till around February time in order to request it, to wait to see what the overspend position was. But this year, because we can see it coming, we've got in early to make sure that there wouldn't be any issue. So it is something we can do retrospectively. It's not too much of a challenge. We're just ahead of the game this year, just based on the fact that we know it's going to be a challenge.
And so will it require a vote at council to agree that spend, or
no, it wouldn't. No, the Secretary of State we can delegate that, and we can just take that through.
Could I just ask a supplementary question on that? Because it seems to me that it's got to be in the budget somewhere, because this is going to happen, isn't it? So wouldn't it be necessary to put it into the budget coming up for 22-23? Because it looks as though it could be well in excess of 50 grand, which will have to come off other work that we might have done with our council housing. I mean, the money has to come from somewhere, is my concern.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense to put mitigation in.
Liz, that sounds like a good recommendation, that Cabinet consider making budget provision for DHP spend within the HRA budget.
Yeah, I'd be happy
in terms of the plan, in terms of the budget that's put forward to full council.
Yep.
It is something we used to have, and then because we weren't using it, I think it fell away. But it would be sensible to reinstate that.
Okay. Good. Okay. Anyone else? Lawrence.
Thank you, Linda. James, under paragraph 9, it says gives some figures for people who have been receiving DHP for 1 year and then for over 2 years. Could you just clarify what over 2 years actually represents in practice? Are we saying just over 2 years, or 4 or 5 years?
We haven't. If we had anybody over 3 years, we would have put that in as well. So it's between 2 and 3 years, but at the point of when we wrote that, obviously when we wrote the paper, so that would have increased by now.
Right. Okay. And to follow on for that, I noticed there's a line that says there are residents with no practical options to change their circumstances. How would they ever get out of that situation?
And therein lies the incredible challenge, because I mean, just as a, you know, what it tends to be are lone parents with multiple children renting in the private sector. So, you know, being able to do enough work to exempt them from the benefit cap, incredibly challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the only time they would ever really become affordable is if they could enter sort of social housing, which we all know how challenging that is. But honestly, even at that point, they would still be benefit capped, so still wouldn't have enough income to be able to pay their rent. Their rent would just be significantly lower. This is the problem with the benefit cap. It really does cause problems like that, because it is quite literally a trap. I mean, the only other option would be if someone could claim a disability benefit for one of the children, but that, you know, that would require one of the family members to have a qualifying need.
So are you actually saying there will be people for whom they cannot get out of this situation that will have to have DHP for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, until the youngest child is old enough that they can then go to work for 16 hours a week. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The challenges come obviously when we have those conversations and then sort of they have another child, and that's where obviously that's when the difficult decisions have to be made to a certain extent.
Okay.
Any other panel members with questions? Liz again, yeah.
Thanks very much, Linda. It's a question which has come up in the last few days with a resident of mine living in a hotel. Housing benefit isn't sorted out. She's got no money to pay for the hotel and they're getting a bit fed up, not surprisingly, and she's got nowhere else to go. I was looking at 2.2 and I was quite hopeful about that. It says that's 2.2 of Appendix 11, I think it is, page 15, 16. In order to be considered for an award of discretionary housing payment, there is an exception for residents on universal credit, which she has got, moving into temporary accommodation, and as a result of a period of no entitlement to benefits, when they can be considered for DHP for the period of underlying entitlement. So could I ask whether this resident of mine is possibly somebody who could get DHP even though she hasn't got her housing benefit at the moment?
I mean, yes, they could. I mean, what I would say is there are probably better solutions for her. And if you would like to share the details of the customer with me, I actually think we could probably resolve that in a much more sustainable way. So
shall I take it offline and email you?
Absolutely. And let me look into it and we'll figure out sort of how we resolve that in a, like I say, DHP might solve it temporarily, but we need a proper solution. So let's figure out what that is, and then if we need some temporary funding in the meantime, we can resolve that as well.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, I'll come back to you.
Thanks, James. Chris, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about point 2.4 of Appendix 1, which is on page 16, and the first bullet point in there, which is the list of circumstances where it's not intended to award DHP. And the first listed there is about assistance with moving costs and rent in advance. And I just wanted some clarification really on as to why that's included as one of the reasons why one of the areas where one of DHP wouldn't be given by default. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Before you come back, James, I've got a question on the same area. It was just about where it says DHP won't be given if there's suitable accommodation available, which could be used. I was just wondering, is there a geographical, what geographical limit is put on that? You know, are we talking about Oxford or the Oxford area, or is it a bigger area than that where someone will be refused if they've got something else suitable to go to? Thanks.
Sure. Okay, start with yours, Linda. I mean, generally we would be looking within the city boundary for that, but it would depend on the customer circumstances and what a suitable alternative accommodation is deemed sort of through our housing team. But but generally it would be in Oxford. That would be what we were looking at. Again, I mean, all of these things, they're not hard and fast rules, you know, that they are rules where we would generally be looking to award. It doesn't mean that we never would, but yeah. So if there was a case that you're aware of, we could certainly talk about that one. In terms of the other question, Chris, that it's mainly because we have other funding streams within the council that are more designed for that purpose. So it's about how we alleviate pressure on the discretionary housing payment fund and make sure that where we're funding things from the right place, because it gives us a much better indication of where we need to be putting our resources.
Okay, thanks, James. So just to follow up on mine, I mean, I understand this, you know, all of these cases need to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, and I can understand that when people have got children at school in the city, obviously, you know, they can't be expected to move far away, or if people rely on, you know, whatever kind of support, whether formal support or informal in the city, then likewise. But where that isn't the case, surely we could expect people to move further afield, like within the wider Oxford area that you know, people generally commute into the city from to work or to access services.
Absolutely.
I misunderstood.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So that's what we do already.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not just Oxford City; it's a wider area.
It is a wider area, but you know, generally we'd like to keep, you know, people in the city boundary, but it really does depend on the circumstances and their, you know, and as you say, their ability to leave and what the out of area offer is. So yes, it does go wider than that, and yeah, it's difficult to give a blanket answer for that, for that sort of thing.
Chair, could I just? I think it's where we hold a statutory duty. We would look at support if there was a requirement for us to support that with DHP, and someone was housed outside of the district, then they, in those types of circumstances, they'd be entitled. So it's where we hold a duty.
No, I'm talking about when people are refused it because there's accommodation they can move to elsewhere.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
No, I get you, Linda. I'll be honest. I can't remember that we've ever turned someone down because there's been suitable alternative accommodation. You know, is probably the reality of it. I suspect it's one of those things that we do have in place because it's one that we need. I'm not sure that we've ever actually exercised it in practice. So, you know, I understand the point, and we would use it, but it's not one that comes up very often, just because alternative suitable accommodation is so hard. We used to have something in the policy about finding cheaper alternative accommodation as an option, but it's just not practical. So you know, we took it out just because it was, you know, it was just taking up space that we didn't need.
Yeah.
So I do take your point. Like I say, on a practical basis, we're not using it. However, we would consider out of area placements that were reasonable as a reason to refuse.
Okay. Any other members? Okay. There was perhaps another recommendation that I thought we might like to make, just on paragraph 28, page 12. There's a list there of potential overspend mitigations that have been put in place. I think particularly the last one, it says the council has received £223,729 in of government money, which could be used to offset any spending in excess of the government's DHP grant. And I was just wondering if it wasn't used towards the DHP budget, you know, how else could it be spent? Because it seems to me that putting it in the DHP budget would make the most sense and be the most straightforward way forward. with it. So perhaps a recommendation from this panel would be just to endorse those potential overspend mitigations, going forward. And that includes the use of the HRA money, which we've discussed, as well as the use of this extra government money. Does that sound sensible, James?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, seems very logical.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we've got a second recommendation then.
Sure. I think just to be clear, our desire is to use as little of that 223,000 as we can, because actually there is some flexibility within that funding to do some other things as well. So I think it's just clear that obviously we don't want to use it on an overspend if we can help it, but it is useful to know that it's there.
So are you able to tell us a bit more about how it would be used if it wasn't used on the DHP budget?
I mean, we only found out about it earlier in the week, and I think we're still kind of figuring out how that links together with the Department of Work and Pensions household support grant, as well as other funding. That there are projects that we've had in mind for a while, which would be useful, particularly around tenancy sustainment in the private sector. Almost sort of some mediation work that we'd like to do for landlords who are looking to serve notice, and how we can intervene early to sort of stop that. Our statistics show that most of our homelessness comes via the private sector, sort of nearly all of it. So, anything that, we want to make sure that we've got some option about how we can trial a new service in that area as well. Like I say, it's very new, this funding.
Yep.
I would just want to make sure that there was some capacity in there to make sure we could, perhaps do something innovative with it if we can get it together.
Sounds good. Yeah, look forward to seeing some of that come online, hopefully, if there's any money left. Okay, anyone else before we move on to the next item? If not, thank you very much, Shaista and James. Obviously, you're welcome to stay to listen to us talk about empty homes, but you're also very welcome to leave. Thank you very much for coming this evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so empty homes, and we've got Melanie Much here to talk us through this paper, to introduce it. Melanie, are you there?
Chair, that Alex Hollingsworth will be joining the meeting, but he did say he won't be able to attend till 6:45. So it may be that if there are questions and he wants to say anything, we might need to circle back. But yeah, just to let you know, we also have Ian Wright as well.
I was going to say we're fortunate to have Ian Wright with us too. So yeah, thank you for coming. Ian, over to you both to introduce this report.
Okay, shall I? I'll run through the report. So, empty homes. The definition of an empty home for council tax purposes is a property that's been empty for over 6 months. And the reason why empty homes are such an issue in Oxford is primarily because of the demand for housing in the city, and every home that is empty is seen as it's a wasted asset in a city where there's a lot of pressure on the stock. In terms of the actual numbers from the current council tax records, you will see that there's 262 which have been empty for 6 months to 2 years, and then there's another category which is over 2 years, and there's 114 properties that within that particular category, and then that's further broken down into 2 and 5 years, which is 87, and 5 and 10, 18 properties, and then 9 which have been vacant for over 10 years. There's further categories of empty properties. For example, there's those properties which are awaiting probate, and so that's where there's been a death in the family, and for various reasons the probate hasn't been sorted out, and the property is sort of sat there in limbo, and there's currently 184 of those within the city, and then there's properties which are being renovated, and there's 54 of them. So numbers, they do fluctuate. It does change. So at the moment, that figure of 376 is what we're looking at in terms of what we would report as empty properties for government returns. To put that into context, that's it's higher than our last report in 2020, which is 349. And there's been a rise in empty homes, and I think that's what we're reflecting is what's going on nationally. Certainly, it's been reported that nationally there's been quite a significant rise in empty homes. So within the city, what we do is we send questionnaires out to people who have got an empty property and ask them why it's empty. And there's a list of reasons there in the report in paragraph 5. So you'll see, a number of unusual things, perhaps. When you think about the value of properties in Oxford, to leave a property empty is quite odd. When it's the least affordable city in the UK, but there are people who are in that position, and they can't cope, and they have mental health issues. There are some people who want the asset to sit there; they see it as their pension. There are some people who don't like being told what to do by the council, and use their property as a way of getting into disputes with the council. And you will also see that there's other issues there where properties are being redeveloped, etc. So there's quite a wide range of reasons why a property is actually empty. And the council has Mel, who's our part-time empty homes officer, who leads on this particular part of the service, and like I say, she sends out questionnaires to people, and she carries out other work in chasing up people who've got empty homes. And it's worth reflecting on where we sit within the national picture around empty homes. And we did commission a report back in 2018. There's a perception around empty homes. Like I say, any home that is empty in Oxford is seen as a real problem and a waste. And that report that we commissioned back in 2018, it did have some good news for us, in a sense that when you look at our performance there, 29th out of 326 local authorities, we are a good performer, and I think it's worth holding on to that information, and that fact that we are quite a good performer when compared to the national picture here. But obviously, completely understand that every home that's empty is a waste. So Mel works with the internal services and also external services to tackle empty homes. When complaints come in from, as they frequently do, we get about 50 complaints a year, quite often from members around empty homes. If there's nuisance being caused by those properties, then she will pick those up and deal with those. We also try and incentivize empty homeowners to bring their home back into use. We subscribe to something called Flexible Home Improvement Loans Limited, which is 17 local authorities that have a fund and one of the funding strands in there is a loan for empty properties. However, we find that most people who own an empty property don't want that particular loan mechanism to help bring the property back into use. They don't want to pay interest, and they're not interested in, say, renting out the property for social rent either. So quite often it's it's a facility which there's very, very small demand for. In terms of what the council does around council tax, we have clearly the council stepped up its position around this with employing quite a costly procedure for empty homeowners, where council tax premiums jump up quite significantly, which is only right, and that incentive to get the property back into use is one of the messages that Mel puts out to empty homeowners. When it comes to the legislation around long-term empty homes, it's a relatively clunky piece of legislation. It's not something that there's a significant amount of enforcement work nationally. There's empty dwelling management orders that can be used. We have in the past employed that, not to any great success. And I think nationally, the numbers that are issued are sort of single figures, teens, 20s per year across the piece, which demonstrates that that the legislative tools that we have at our disposal aren't particularly well used nationally, because they're not that easy to use. Another option that we have is a compulsory purchase order, and again, that's not a very straightforward, easy procedure. There's potential costs around public inquiries, and it's quite a lengthy procedure. Plus, the council has to have a budget to be able to buy the property, and the council, it currently doesn't have a compulsory purchase budget. There's no capital budget. There was at one point a budget of around £750,000. But that stopped as a facility a number of years ago, largely because it wasn't being used to any great extent. The council has issued a compulsory purchase order. That was several years ago, when it bought a property which had been vacant for quite some considerable time, and that's been put back into use. That's a brief overview of where we are with empty homes. We've got Mel on the line, who deals with the operational side and with the detailed side of how we go about using those powers. And we'll have some examples and case studies if people want to ask about those. But just to open it out now to comments and questions.
Thanks, Ian, for that very comprehensive overview of the service. Yeah, any members got any questions, comments? Nadine?
Yeah, hi, thank you very much for the report. So it talks, you talk in the report about this new homes bonus scheme, and it says that will stop this year, I think, or in 2022. Is it going to be replaced by another scheme? And is the council going to lose a lot of money if the scheme disappears altogether? Thank you.
Mel, do you know the answer to that one?
Yes, I think it is. I think that there is a view, and it would be in financial services, they would know more about this, but the latest is that they still haven't heard anything about how it will be replaced, and also what the rulings will be in terms of what we've got to do to achieve any bonus system that they're going to offer.
I think this might be, Nadine, that might be one to raise when Alex comes on the call, which we're expecting in about 5 minutes or so as well. Yeah, it might be interesting to hear what he's got to say about that.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that, you know, delivering, you know, when we get an empty home filled, that helps contribute towards that bonus. So that's why, you know, it's relevant to empty homes. You know, the better you perform on empty homes, then, you know, it fed into that particular system. So, you know, there is a financial incentive for the authority to carry out the work.
Chris.
Yeah, thanks for the paper and the report. I think it's incredibly clarifying from my end. I had a few interrelated questions about the premium council tax element of this work, and I guess the first bit of it is how effective do we think that is at incentivising bringing those houses back into use? The second question is there an upper limit on what you're able to charge as that premium council tax rate, or is that set by the council? And if it's not set, what would be the prospects for us raising that if we think that it's possible to incentivise even firmer by using that mechanism?
Thanks for that, Chris. Just on that as well, Ian, could you just also clarify for us, for the council tax purposes, is there a difference between empty homes and second homes, or are they treated the same? Thanks. Would you like to come back on that, and then I know Lawrence has got his hand up as well.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of is it an incentive? You know, the answer is yes. And you know, I think for the people who leave properties empty for, you know, the shorter end, you know, the 2 years, then yes, you know, suddenly they find that they are paying quite a significant amount, and so, you know, that is something which is worthwhile, and is you know, it is an incentive. I think once you get into someone who is quite happy to pay you know, 300% additional charge, and they've kept a property over 10 years, it's then questionable as to whether that is actually having an impact. So I think it has an impact at one end, and it doesn't seem to have that much of an impact at the other. In terms of options on, you know, can you charge even more? I must admit, I'm not clear on that. I'm not an expert on council tax. I mean, Mel again might know the answer to that.
I think there is the potential to charge more, but I don't know to what extent. I mean, that's something that, you know, council tax will be able to clarify. But yes, I believe that other local authorities are looking at charging more on the higher end in terms of those that have been empty over 10 years. So yeah, I think that there is potential for that.
What do we do at the moment? 200%?
So on those that are 2 to 5 years, it's 100%. So you're paying twice the council tax. Then after 5 years, up until 10 years, you're paying 200%. So you're paying 3 lots of council tax. And then those that are after 10 years, after 10 years, you're paying 300. After 5 to 10 years, it's 200%. So, yeah.
And just to comment in on your comment about second homes, there's a definition of second homes, and if a property's unoccupied but it's got furniture in it, that it's then argued that it's a second home, and so you can't apply the premium to that second home because it's not unoccupied and it's not substantially unfurnished. So that's where you get into that definition of what is substantially unfurnished. And so you can get people who may move furniture in and then make it look like it is being used.
Okay, that's useful, thank you. Lawrence.
Chair, before Lawrence, it says just to say Councillor Hollingsworth, I think, has just joined. So, sorry, after you, Lawrence.
Okay. Yeah, could you, this is a question for Ian, could you clarify the compulsory purchase process? If the council compulsorily purchases a house, does it have to then become a council-owned property, or could it then be resold?
It can be resold.
So, in fact, in a way, the council wouldn't actually need much of a budget to do anything apart from the costs of the CPO. And in fact, it could, in this housing market in Oxford, make a profit, surely.
Can I just say
Yeah.
something? You can. There are local authorities who've already got a planned sale for the property as they're approaching the CPO, as they're coming towards the end of the CPO process. So you can have a buyer lined up so that as soon as the order is confirmed, that property can be sold. So there's a limited period with which the council would have to hold money in abeyance in order to, it's called, the value of the property is called compensation. So, and then the other instance is you can acquire empty dwellings that maybe have potential to be developed or subdivided, or the amenity area to provide further housing provision. You can also compulsory purchase properties and then sell on the site or the development. So there is a means of making money, but you then have to think about the potential for the person who owns a property to claim the development value as well. So there is that issue, but generally you can't make a profit on the property we compulsory purchased. We wouldn't have made a profit on that particular dwelling.
So compulsory purchase orders, the owner of the house receives the market price, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if, for example, the property wasn't in a very good condition and the council compulsorily purchased it, refurbished it and then sold it, does that imply that the owner would get a share of the increased price?
No, they would get market value at the
as
time
it was.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Chris, your hand is up. Is that a legacy hand, or do you want to come back on the points you raised earlier?
Yeah, I guess just reflecting on the points around the council tax thing, I wondered if we, to get a sense of what other panel members think about this, whether there's a potential for a recommendation around this higher end, the higher end premium for the council tax, because from what I got the sense of is that at the moment we're looking that the lower rate of 2 to 5 year vacancy, the premium is having a incentive impact, but the higher end of 10 plus years is not, and whether there's a recommendation around exploring whether increasing that that council tax premium at the 10 years plus would be would be something we want to pursue.
I would be supportive of that. I've had a quick glance at the government website, and it says that if for empty properties, you can be charged up to double the council tax. But clearly, we're already doing more than that if we're charging 300% on long-term empty properties. Everyone's frozen, which
No,
I think you're back, Chair.
Yeah.
am I back in the room?
Yeah, you are.
Everybody froze. Right. So I was saying I would be supportive of that, Chris, but I've just had a look at the government website, and it says that empty properties can be liable for to be charged double council tax, but clearly we're already exceeding that and charging 300% on long-term empty properties. So I would really like to know, what the position is in terms of what we're able to do. I know Councillor Hollingsworth has joined us now. I don't know if he's able to throw any light on the subject in terms of what the limits are to how much council tax we can actually charge. As a maximum on empty property.
Not immediately, I'm afraid. I too was about to double check where we're at, so I might look to officers on the details of that one.
Yeah.
I think it's Council Tax Empty Dwellings Act. It looks like from the 1st of April 2019, 100% premium, empty for 2 years or more, 200% for those properties empty for 5 years or more, 300% empty for 10 or more. So I think we're already at the max.
Yeah. Which limits the scope for a recommendation. Chris, it sounds like we're doing everything already, which is good to know. Okay, Liz, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Just a couple of questions. One is about second homes. What Ian was saying was that you can't charge additional council tax on a second home, provided it is a second home. And I just wondered whether that's a government thing, which we can't do anything about, or whether we can do anything locally. It just seems unreasonable that one can't do that, because I have a suspicion that in Cornwall, where this is a huge problem, that they do charge more on second homes. And the other question that I've got is about renovation work. I mean, I'm thinking of a property I know which is, for the last 8 years, they've had the Harris fencing outside, and occasionally somebody turns up in a hard hat for half a day. What can you do about a situation where there's no real intention to move the property on, but they can say that the property is in process of being renovated? Do we have a point where we say, sorry guys, this isn't real, you're not actually renovating, or are we stuck? So that's 2 questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Ian, would you like to come back on those 2?
Okay. Second homes. Yeah, as I said before, there's a definition of what an empty home is, which is unoccupied and substantially unfurnished, and this is where the second home falls into a different category. I think there's some flexibility around what councils can charge for second homes and holiday homes, and that's why you do get different charges in different places. I know, for instance, I know it's Wales, but there was a friend of mine who bought a holiday home in Pembrokeshire, and they were paying twice the council tax because it was a holiday home. So if there's a legislative ability to charge for second homes or holiday homes, then that would clearly be a good option to try and drive those. Well, Alex is shaking his head here. Clearly disagrees with me on that one.
I don't disagree with you on the principle. I disagree with you on the fact, which is that I believe council tax legislation allows authorities to give a discount to second homes. Cornwall rightly chooses not to, and nor do we. What I don't think it allows you to do is to charge a premium, and as far as I'm aware, Cornwall doesn't charge a premium.
Okay.
And I'm happy for somebody to correct me, but that is on the basis of having researched it just now.
Okay. Clearly Wales has got a different rule there. Maybe it's because it's a national park. Yeah.
No, it's because it's a separate country.
Well, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Oh, there's the second point, Ian.
Oh, well, that was around the builders.
Yeah.
You know, well, if this renovation works, they're dragging it out. I think for us, we would have to look at that particular case and see whether it was someone who is effectively dragging that particular element out. I don't know if Mel, have we had any cases where we've taken any action or pushed people on this particular topic?
Well, when it is reported to us, we will get in touch with them, and then what we'll do is we'll ask them to give us a schedule of works. We did have one property in Bullingdon Road that was repeatedly reported to us, and so we did keep going around and have a conversation with them about various things that were preventing them from completing the work. I mean, in that instance, it was genuine, and I believe that the house is due to be occupied shortly anyway. So yes, so we do react to it, and obviously it's a case of monitoring it. But then there comes a point where it's a decision about, well, do we challenge them with some of our formal action, just like any other empty property market.
And shall I pass this one on to you? I suspect all the neighbours have already told you about it, but I can send an email because 8 years is a long time.
Yes, yeah, no, please do. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes just us getting in touch with them
is
enough for them to have a think about the process.
Okay, thanks.
They've been getting away with not doing anything with it for so long, and then all of a sudden we start taking an interest. Sometimes it's enough.
I mean, sometimes, you know, some people have development plans, but then, you know, the money runs out, and, you know, rather than, you know, there's then some fear about losing the planning permission, etc. And so they then start dragging things out. So, you know, it's also possible that, you know, there's some circumstances like that with that particular property. I don't know if the neighbours, you know any more, but if you do want to, you know, send that through to Mel, then that's something that we can pick up. And similarly, if, for instance, you know, the work is having an impact on the visual amenity, and you know, it's not good to look at. You know, it's detrimental to the amenity of the neighbourhood. You know, there's other legislative powers that we have that we could bring to bear to deal with a property that's, you know, not looking that great and dragging the street down. So, you know, there's other things rather than empty homes that we can look at using.
That's useful, thanks. Any grants available to people who've run out of money?
It depends. We do have some, you know, the Home Improvement Agency has disabled facilities grants, and, you know, we've got quite a flexible approach within that. So, you know, that's worth people looking at. There's also the Flexible Home Improvement Loan Scheme that we have. So if anyone's aged over 60, they can access that as well. We do have a small pot of essential repair grant. It's 15,000 a year that we do hand out to people who have been means tested, and where there's category 1 hazards at their property. So, you know, if there really are some issues with their property, then we'll give out some grant funding there as well. And the Home Improvement Agency will also look to source money from, say, the utility suppliers, eco funding and what have you. So there are a range of options, and if you look at the website, you'll see Home Improvement Agency, you'll see what we've got on offer.
That's really useful. Thanks very much, Ian.
Okay, Nadine.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Chair. It's a question for Alex. So the new homes bonus scheme is an incentive for local authority to bring empty homes in use. So when it stops in 2022, what will happen after that?
So Nadine asked this earlier, and I suggested that Alex, that you might be able to comment on this when you arrived. Sorry.
Right. Okay.
What are your thoughts?
I think. My thoughts are that the initial response is we just don't know. I mean, the government is prone to announcing things at short notice and without giving us any guidance. So, for example, there was, it's unrelated to this particular issue, but it's typical of the situation we find ourselves in. The government issued a press release of a few lines saying there was 60-something million pounds going to be given to local authorities to support people in private rent arrears. And since then, there has been no guidance whatsoever on who they think is going to be supported by what mechanism, how local authorities are supposed to dole the money out. I mean, they've literally just issued a press release. And so it is very difficult to know in the circumstances what the government may do if they decide to extend the new homes bonus scheme, which they've done in the past. I should say the primary beneficiaries of this have been Conservative district councils with reasonably large house building programmes in their areas. So there's a lot of political pressure coming through Conservative backbenchers to not abolish this particular scheme. So to be honest, I don't know. It's a big risk is what I would say, but quite how we handle it is currently unclear. Yes, I think were the panel to recommend that we take it very seriously as a risk, I think we already are, so we'd agree. If that's not massively helpful, but I'm not really sure what else we can say at this stage. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Lawrence.
Yes, a quick question about Appendix 3 to the report. Are the figures available for the new homes bonus showing the split between new build homes and recycled empty homes? It's just a gross figure at the moment.
It is just a gross figure. There's not a breakdown in there. I don't know if Mel, have we got?
We can provide that if anyone wants to see it.
I think it would be useful to judge where the new homes bonus money is coming from.
Yeah.
If you just want to send that to me, and I'll forward it round.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lawrence. So this isn't a cabinet report we've got in front of us, so it's a bit different. We're not making anything we decide tonight, it's not really a recommendation to put forward to cabinet, relating to a report they're deciding. But I do think we should take forward this issue of second homes, holiday homes, and ask that the cabinet member and officers go away and establish what the legal position is in terms of what we're able to do in terms of possibly increasing council tax on second homes. So can we ask that happens, and that just a report on that, about what the legal situation is and what the options available to the council could be? Could we ask that comes back to the housing panel?
Yeah, very happy to do a note, just making sure we've all got the same understanding. I think we've probably arrived at roughly the right understanding, but it'd be good to double check where we're at.
It's not a clear picture, just as a quick bit of Googling.
Yeah, exactly.
Suggests.
Yeah,
there's all sorts about legal loopholes for holiday homes which are registered as a business, and and it gets very complicated.
That's a different matter, one which me and Ian are already discussing. We have an action plan for. We don't have a situation anything remotely like as bad as Cornwall and North Norfolk have, with hundreds, if not thousands, of properties registered as business rates. But we have a small and growing number in Oxford, which means they're not paying any council tax at all. This is mostly short-term let properties, which is a slightly different matter to empty properties. But we have a number of irons in the fire, not least ODS exploring whether we can start charging commercial refuse collection rates, which I think might bring things into focus. But we will keep you posted on that.
Please do, because that sounds really interesting. But you're right. Let's focus on the second homes and what we can do about council tax for now. So a note on that to a future meeting would be appreciated. Thank you very much.
Would you want it straight? We could probably do it really quickly and then circulate it. Yeah.
Let's have it. We've got a panel meeting scheduled now for the 16th of December. So it might be nice to have it then, if that's possible.
Stephen Gabriel, is that deliverable?
Sorry, everyone's breaking up again and freezing.
I just asked, is Stephen Gabriel happy with that time frame? And
yeah, Tom, I think we should be able to come up with a response to the meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Then we'll get it added, Chair. I think we might have just lost the chair for a moment.
You can have a revolt.
Me.
The good news is that we've pretty much reached the end of the meeting, I think. We'll give her like 2 minutes to come back, but if not, then it is just the dates of future meetings to do, and we've got one coming up, as mentioned, on 16th of December. But aside from that, I think we can bring it to an end. Anyone have anything else they wanted to add? No. Okay.
Tom, I think Linda's just coming back in.
Oh, okay. Fab. Yeah, she has just rejoined.
Sorry about that.
Don't worry, Linda.
I'm back. Sorry.
Just wrapping up the meeting
I think
for you.
we've concluded that. Okay, great. Yeah, I think we concluded that item. We've got the date of the next meeting set for the 16th at 5 o'clock. So I think, that brings this meeting to an end. So thank you very much, everyone. Sorry about my connection.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Cheers, Tom. Thanks very much.